Hi, folks, and welcome to another Rio and Draw conversation. This time we have a very special guest, Jamie O'Mahony, who has been traveling all over. He was a couple of days back in the UK. Now he's back in his hometown in Limerick, where he was assaulted, believe me or not, for displaying an Israeli flag, which seems to be a massive issue these days. Like we were told not to show any sort of Israeli or Jewish item in person. But I think that raises the main issue of freedom of speech, because I mean, what's the issue of having a flag or a Jewish thing on your neck or anywhere with you? Why is that? Like this, we should live in a place where we are able to have conversations, we're able to talk to each other, but it seems to be more and more difficult, especially with a certain part of the society. Ireland is not an exception. I think the Irish society has been exposed to this virus, and we don't want that. We don't want that. And I think Jamie is doing great work on that regard. So stay with us for the next hour or 90 minutes. I think there's plenty to go through. If you have comments, questions, or any sort of input, make sure to use the chat box. It's there to make sure to make this conversation interactive. If you haven't really subscribed to our podcast, it would be great if you can, because that's how it gets distributed on the YouTube sphere. And if you would like to express your satisfaction, the best way to do it is to press the like button below. If you know someone who is into the topic and they are not familiar with what we do here on every Wednesday, make sure to share. I just want to add that this episode is sponsored by a travel device, so there is a discount below that you can use to book your holiday or your excursion. Travel device has individuals in 3 locations: Ireland, Israel, and Italy, and they are experts in every single part of the planet. So if you want to have the time of your life when you are traveling, maybe they can customize the tour according to your wishes and needs. So just make sure to contact a travel device by phone or email and provide the discount code. I also want to mention that we have a second sponsor who just started working with us a couple of weeks back. His name is Roy Berkowitz, and he is a fabulous designer. So he has a lot of stuff if you are passionate about Israel or just an animal lover. So make sure to check the link in the YouTube video description. There is a discount code there as well. So I invite you to visit those 2 sponsors, and I thank them for their partnership. So before I talk to Jamie, I just want to ask Marco to a couple of words from his end.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Vitor. It's going to be very interesting this evening hearing Jamie O'Mahony's perspective, because he's been in the news recently subsequent to some very serious episodes in Ireland. It's a very different Ireland from the Ireland I grew up in. Our attitudes have hardened with regard to both Israel and the Jews, I suppose, because it's a little bit of an excuse just to attack Israel. I think we're seeing some pretty unsavory things, yet I believe this is mostly the chattering classes. I believe most Irish people are unaware of what's going on and basically have had this ideology of Palestinism practiced upon them. Jamie, if you could just sort of take us through the series of events which led to your sudden burst to fame.
Firstly, guys, thank you for having me. It's good to be here and get to chat about a problem that I think is getting worse in Ireland, but there are those of us, of course, who are trying to counter it. So yeah, essentially, I won't go too much into my background or childhood on this, but I visited Israel for the first time in 2022 with my parents. I was there for a week and I absolutely loved it, and I would call it a pretty life-changing experience. And I came to see it as a very inspiring, pleasant country to be in that had seen off multiple existential wars to destroy it, and has since built an amazing economy with great quality of life for its citizens, all while remaining a democracy and free and multi-ethnic, really. So yeah, and then unfortunately, and then since the war, since October 7th. I just thought it was one of the worst atrocities that had ever played out in my life. You know, a lot of people talk about 9/11 previously as a key moment of kind of shock at such a display of terror. And I suppose I had that kind of experience myself. I just started university at the time, and yeah, since then I've gotten involved with the Ireland-Israel Alliance. Sought to speak at a debate at my university in March of 2024. That was kind of my first real sort of semi-public appearance on this. And yeah, even I remember, I'll never forget, November 2023, I attended a debate in University College Dublin, which I saw descend into complete chaos when one man got up and started shouting that Palestinians would repeat October 7th again and again, and then cries of Allahu Akbar. And I remember I witnessed Natasha Hausdorff that night, who just displayed an incredible dignity in the face of such shouts and abuse. And it was a real kind of defining moment for me, I would say. I myself lost my cool when I saw Richard Boyd Barrett, an Irish member of Parliament, saying that he wouldn't condemn Hamas and that they were legitimately resisting oppression. And then
I would have been surprised had he condemned them, to be perfectly honest, knowing the individual concerned. So he hasn't disappointed us in this respect.
Yeah, true. And I mean, since then he's gone on to say all sorts of other abhorrent things. So that's just him and his type. So yeah, and then became involved with Students Supporting Israel, who have been fantastic. And Ilan Pappé, their president. I went to Florida last December as a part of a student conference with them, and then set up my own chapter of Students Supporting Israel on my campus in March 2025, alongside some other guys. And yeah, essentially write in occasionally with my blog on the Times of Israel or the Jerusalem Post. Tried to send in letters sometimes to the Irish Times to combat their immense bias on this issue, I think. And yeah, and then of course that led us up to, I guess, last nearly 2 weeks ago now, where I went to the Ilan Pappé event.
Yes, indeed. So just to get an idea, what do people? I mean, I left Ireland many years ago, of course, when I was your age, more or less. What is the general view among people of your age? Can you sort of say that that there is sympathy, antipathy, or the various is it more nuanced than that? What can you tell me about your generation?
There's certainly not any nuance that's allowed to be expressed. Really, you can't give any. The words Zionism and Israel have become real dirty words, I would say, unfortunately, and could never be mentioned in a positive light, and particularly among students and young people who tend to be the most radical in society anyway. I mean, I'm just glad I don't go to Trinity College Dublin, to be honest.
Right.
With their recent BDS enactments and the way they carry on their campus. I mean, my university never even had an encampment last year, but nonetheless, in Ireland there has been Ireland was never really a friend of Israel in the first place, but particularly since the current war, it's just gotten more and more extreme, and Ireland has become, I would say, carried away, drunk on its own, self-righteousness, thinking of ourselves as virtuous for standing up for the Palestinians, as people would see it. And I would say by far and away the most anti-Israel and anti-Semitic country in Europe. And I say that even because, maybe there mightn't be so many anti-Semitic incidents or attacks in Ireland. We don't have, thankfully the synagogue hasn't been firebombed, for example, like in Australia. There aren't, thankfully, so many attacks on Jews or Israelis, but at least in other countries such as the UK, where you have a strong degree of radicalism, there is also a strong pro-Israeli cohort. And if Ireland wasn't seen to be such a one-dimensional society on this issue, you wouldn't have had the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs simply deciding it wasn't worth their time to even have an embassy in Dublin, which they obviously withdrew last December.
Right. But do you think this is, I mean, you frequent students, but what about the man in the street? Does the man, what does the man in the street feel about this thing? You presumably, you don't just frequent students, you go into a pub, you go into a cafe, you go to markets, you go to shops. What do they express? I mean, are they that concerned? To be perfectly honest, Ireland shares no borders with Israel, to my knowledge. There are no unresolved territorial conflicts. Why do they get so worked up about Israel? Or perhaps are the media misrepresenting public feeling?
I would say, firstly, you have it spot on about the media. Your average person who maybe isn't too engaged with, reading history or going too deep into understanding the current affairs that they see. But if the average person comes home every evening and turns on RT News, which is the state broadcaster here, or reads the Irish Times, which is meant to be kind of the upstanding, good paper to read of the middle class, or maybe they even watch a bit of BBC. All they're seeing is just non-stop criticism and demonization and biased slandering of Israel all the time, often without mention of really basic things that need to be acknowledged, like Iran's role across the Middle East over the last 40 years nearly. Over 40. Or that the figures coming out of the Gazan Health Ministry are literally coming from Hamas. No one wants to acknowledge that. People often forget, in Ireland specifically, things like the fact that one of our own was murdered on October 7th. Kim Dampty, a young woman, was murdered at the Nova Festival. And we had an 8-year-old girl who was kidnapped. So essentially, if you're the average man or woman, and this is all you're seeing about Israel, of course you're going to take on these ideas. They simply won't. It's no longer even talked of as being a war. I mean, there have been, I think, nearly 50 IDF soldiers killed in Gaza over the since Operation Gideon's Chariots was launched in May. I mean, it's mounting enough casualty list at the moment, tragically. The way it's portrayed in the media is, Israel is just deciding to arbitrarily, almost for the fun of it, and level Gaza. And it's never mentioned, of course, the usage of civilian infrastructure by Hamas, or all the efforts that the IDF takes to avoid casualties. Everything can be, or the fact that aid was throughout this conflict, the majority of it was simply looted by Hamas and used as a power tool over its own people.
So essentially, the media is engaging in blanket disinformation. Because when I was growing up in Ireland, there were certainly different opinions. Plenty of people viewed Israel positively, even though Ireland was very late in establishing diplomatic relations and recognizing the state of Israel. It was a very different country in that respect. Many of my Irish friends expressed admiration for Israel as well. I'm sure many people probably still do, but they're afraid to commit themselves. And I can understand that in this atmosphere of hostility, livelihoods are at stake. One can effectively become excommunicated from certain sectors of society. Okay, Vitor, take it away.
I want to show people what happened in Limerick. Maybe some already saw it, but it's no harm to show that there is a context here. So with your permission, I have just a quick 30 seconds here. I know there was more, but I just did took a fraction of what happened. So this is what happened to Limerick, to Jamie a couple of weeks back in Limerick when he was attending a pro-Palestinian event. Okay. Can you see it?
No.
Okay, having some issues here. Sorry, we get into it. So maybe before I show it to the viewers, can you let us know, like, what were your motivations and intents when attending this event, which, to the best of my knowledge, was an event when they hosted Ilan Pappé.
Mm-hmm. So the event is being run by the Ireland-Palestine Solidarity Campaign. They're very large in Ireland. I mean, they have literally, if you go on their website, they're holding, maybe 8-9 events daily across the country. Whether it be minor things like holding flags on a bridge going over a motorway, or speaker events, or vigils, or etc., etc. So they're very large and they're very organized within Ireland, but they're also extremely radical. They don't believe the state should exist at all. They openly support the quote-unquote Palestinian resistance, which we all know that means the proxies of Iran, who are all EU and American prescribed terror groups. So essentially, it's often not worth even engaging with them. But for example, I'd see them on one of the streets in Limerick City on a Saturday afternoon protesting, but essentially, so as I say, I wouldn't normally bother with them. But when I saw that they were hosting Ilan Pappé, who is a fairly prominent academic in his despicable field of anti-Zionism, especially coming from the fact that he is an Israeli Jew and grew up in the state, and now wants to bring about its destruction and God knows what for the 10 million citizens. So I thought, once this guy is coming to Limerick, which is my home city, I couldn't in good conscience allow him to come here and not give him a bit of a challenge. I wouldn't be able to sit with myself after that. So essentially I thought, why not go along? And I prepared a couple of points. I knew of him for years. I bought and read a book of his last year to try and understand the way people like him think. And I had a few statements / questions I wanted to say. And I came along with 2 friends to the event. We had a distinct strategy of not behaving like the other side behave when there's an event they don't like. They come along, they shout, they scream, they maybe assault people. They want to, if they can, they'll stop it ever going ahead in the first place, which they have managed to do, unfortunately, on universities quite a bit over the last 2 years nearly.
Sorry, Jamie, they managed to do it with the complicity of the universities as well and the authorities. I think this needs to be emphasized.
Absolutely, yeah. The universities, implicitly like the fact that, and encourage, and many academics in universities today encourage that debates are shut down. I experienced that myself when I was talking about that debate in March 2024. We were very excited to have a room booked in the university, and we were with the Debate Society, so we were really going to, put on a good show and a display of different opinions. And we got a member of the European Parliament to come into us. And then suddenly there's a joint letter signed by, I think it was about 30 academics to the university to try and shut it down. And they succeeded, unfortunately. The university were cowardly enough to bow down to them, as they are more and more. Universities they're simply not, across certainly places like the US, the UK, Ireland, they are no longer the free places of learning and, inquisitive inquiry. They're simply not anymore, and they should be respected a bit less, unfortunately, because of that. My own mother spent time in the Soviet Union briefly in the 1970s, and she said, you have a university in Ireland in 2025 behaving exactly like how third level institutions would in the Soviet Union. So sorry, where was I? I was talking about something there before.
I disturbed your train of thought. I apologize.
Yes, sorry, Ilan Pappé. Yeah. So I went along, waited throughout his 45-minute lecture, wait until the Q&A, when there can be a discussion, ideally. And I started off making my couple of points. I said, why do you use the privileges that Israel uniquely affords you as a Western country to bring about its destruction? So free speech, freedom to criticize the state and society you live in, and you would have died in a dungeon elsewhere, I think is what I said, in Syria or in Saudi or anywhere else in the Middle East. You want to target specifically the country in the Middle East that is unique in having those standards. And then I mentioned, having read his book, I know he's a rabid communist. I read him when he wrote of Israel as being this sort of capitalist dystopia, ignoring, of course, that the quality of life and incomes of people have gone up the more economically liberal Israel has become. But that's the way he thinks. He ran for Hadash to try and get into the Knesset, I think in the early 2000s and the late 90s. And at this stage, I was already being booed and people were judging and trying to shut me up. They were saying, get on with it, or they were saying that I was making statements instead of asking questions. I mean, as I say, the first one about free speech was explicitly a question, and then I was just leading it up to, I think I was going to ask about something he said in his speech, specifically the lack of mention of hostages, but I didn't get a chance because at this stage, as I say, I was already being shouted down. So I said, look, why not get my flag out? The other two guys I was with had theirs as well. Unfortunately, they didn't get to bring them out at the same time. But I said, look, and this wouldn't normally be my thing. As I say, I'm used to writing articles, giving the odd speech, trying to win over people in arguments. But in this, sometimes it's quite simply their monopoly on the discourse has to be challenged. And if people are seeing Palestinian flags every day up and down the country, it's a good thing that sometimes they see the blue and white Star of David and the Israeli flag.
So you decided to roughhouse it, which was probably the right decision at the time, because there's no possibility of engaging in a logical, reasonable conversation with these people.
I'd learned that in the 45 seconds. Yes, I got it out, and I was about to, I think I was saying I'm Israel Kai, at which stage this guy in front of me tried to rip it out of my hands, and of course I wasn't going to let him do that, so we got into a bit of a scuffle. And about 60 seconds later, with about 4 guys pulling all parts of my body, I was dragged out of the venue. But thankfully, and then it continued on the street for a minute or two, and then we were separated again. And then me and my group went home. My group and I went home. And but crucially, of course, we didn't lose the flag, and we'd gotten it on tape. And yeah, it's just gone kind of semi-viral since then, I guess.
Good.
Let's show it to people. I will try again to the best of my ability. I hope I succeed now. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see it now. Yeah.
Okay, I'm showing now the clip from SSI, from students supporting Israel.
I want to ask, who all you like, I'm a great guy. Don't you fucking do it, it's lethal. Don't you fucking touch me. Don't you fucking touch me. Don't you fucking touch me, sir. I know you. I do know you. I do. I'm not sure. Go on my flag. I have free speech spear. I'm not doing anything. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it here.
You're a very violent man, Jamie. You're a very violent man.
Yeah. Next time I'm in a pub, I'll make sure you are around just in case. Jamie, from a psychological point of view, what went through your mind in the moment that you were confronted? What was the emotion?
At a moment like that, I would say there's not really any, thoughts going through. It's just sheer adrenaline when someone launches themselves at you like that. The only thing I was thinking really was, don't let him get the flag. That was honestly the only thing in my mind. That's why I was holding on to it so much. And then I suppose I was shouting at him quite a bit as well. Just don't touch me. Because I was outraged that he would feel like he could, do that in broad daylight at what's meant to be a public intellectual event. But that's the way these people behave. They think violence is totally okay. They think, for example, over in the Middle East, they think that Hezbollah using houses to fire rockets from is totally justified and okay. They think that slaughtering women and children in their homes in places like Sderot or Kibbutz Kfar Aza is totally okay. And it's the same applies in our part of the world. He feels that if someone dare challenge his worldview, then he's okay to attack them. It's exactly the same mindset of Mosley's thugs in the UK in the 20s and 30s. So yeah, it's how they are.
Can I just ask you, were you physically hurt?
No, I was okay. I had like one bruise on my knee because we ended up on the floor outside afterwards, but no, thankfully I was all right.
Yeah, so I watched your interview in GB News, and one of the things that I will never forget, that you knew this man. He was a family friend. This Gerard guy. He used to hang out around the house, and from my best memory, your parents have his phone number. That's shocking. That's shocking.
Yeah, he taught the language class where my parents met about 25 years ago. He would have been here for dinner. I used to play with his son because we were about 9 or 10 years old. We were of the same age, or similar at least. And we wouldn't have seen him for a couple of years, but my dad might run into him in town now and then. And suddenly, now he didn't recognize me in the moment. But once we got out, by the time we'd gotten outside, I think he knew who I was. That's why, I don't know, I think it was noticeable in the clip there. That's why I'm shouting, "I know you." I know you multiple times, because I was like, oh my God, this is Ger Downs. We're actually doing this. And he's you could see it in his face. His face he's baffled because he's like, whoa, how does this guy know me? And it's just extraordinary to think that who he is as well. He's not someone you'd expect to have a fight or throw himself at someone in the middle of the day. He's an academic at a university who teaches Italian language classes.
Right. But this is a particular problem. I'm sorry, Vitor, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So this sort of bears unwitting testimony to how much the academic class has been infected. I think this is quite extraordinary. Yeah, if he'd had studied in Italy for many years, because I know for many years Italy has been dominated by certain ideas. The left has traditionally been very strong. The Communist Party in Italy was the biggest communist party in Western Europe. So had he studied in Italy, presumably in the past 30, 40 years, he would have picked up a lot of this, because generally speaking, the Communist Party controlled culture in Italy for many decades. So that wouldn't surprise me. We can put the pieces together.
Yeah, and also what's interesting as well, he never reached out since. He never apologized. He probably thinks he's in the right. So what can you do with people?
Yeah.
Let's just show this comment here from a name I wouldn't dare to pronounce, given my modest knowledge of the Irish language, but maybe next time I'll be able to pronounce it correctly. So this person is saying, is it worth pressing charges against someone committing assault? What's your view on that?
I mean, I don't want to spend too long on that, but essentially my family and I went down to the police station a couple of hours afterwards. And look, if I was to file a formal assault charge, that means investigative proceedings, and a court case. And going to court in Ireland it's stressful, it's time costly. It's obviously you have to hire a solicitor, and for what, for my sake, that it comes with all of those things. And this guy is probably going to have, like we see with Kneecap in the UK, he's probably going to have a big crowd outside the courtroom every day who are backing him to the hilt. And with the Irish justice system, unfortunately, I mean, you see guys with 100 convictions getting suspended sentences. What are they going to do to this guy? Give him a tiny fine? And so from my perspective, I didn't think it was worth it. His people seeing who he is, and I know some people sent a few emails to the president of the University of Limerick to make a complaint about the behavior of one of their staff members, but I didn't think it was quite worthy of filing that assault charge. But I did make sort of a secondary statement to the police, essentially just giving an account of what happened, place, name, time, so they have it on file for anything that might crop up in the future. But I hope that answers that.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that from a judicial point of view, it's not that straightforward. But perhaps if you would be living in a decent times, his employer will go after him, because he was, I don't know how much was he representing the academia in that event, but his name is all over the place, so maybe you should think twice. So do you expect some sort of punishment or warning from the academic circles?
No. They probably, as I say, they probably think he was in the right, and he's one of their own as well. So no, I don't.
Yeah.
But you're pursuing studies as well.
Yeah. I've got another 2 years of university to go.
So you have to run the gauntlet.
Well, no, I don't study at his university though.
Oh, I see. Right. But
No,
you're living in the general climate surely isn't that different. I presume within academia in Ireland, there's a certain climate now, a very hostile climate. So you have to watch your back, as it were.
Yeah, and I know academics for Palestine are a pretty prominent group within Ireland.
Right.
I mean, almost every professional class has its own pro-Palestine
chapter of
teachers, artists,
GPs.
Yeah, GPs, outrageous.
It's a springboard. It's a springboard to furthering their career, I assume. But there must be something in it for them.
I actually don't think it's career focused, to be honest. I think it's just people. It's also this fueled. I think Jared's actions that day is the element of mob mentality. Each person verifies the next. Each person verifies the next one's views, and so they all feel great amongst themselves. And then they, in the case of what happened 2 weeks ago, he felt perfectly entitled to throw himself at me because he knew he had 70 plus people in the room who agreed with him, and I was isolated. And that's actually the exact same pattern that I read about in Lord of the Flies, even when I was only 13 years of age. People are they feel more entitled to act in a way they wouldn't normally as a rational individual when they know they're in a group that will boost their behavior.
How did it come to the attention of GB News?
I mean, the video, I suppose, and this is the thing, like what I found a bit amusing was, I write a couple of articles. I'd done political campaigning last year. I was chair of my university's debate society, all of that, right? And yet the thing I do that I'm involved in that gets the most publicity is, of course, a physical altercation. But that's the way people's minds react, especially in the age of social media. That triggers emotions. So there were a lot of prominent people posting the video on Twitter, like a lot of people that I'd have huge admiration for. People like Graham Linehan, people like Jake Wallace-Simons, who I have one of his books upstairs, a former editor of the Jewish Chronicle. Differing kind of public figures, even Colonel Richard Kemp, who was former member of the British Armed Forces in Afghanistan. Now he reposted the GB News interview. So essentially it went kind of semi-viral, and off the back of that, I was approached by a journalist from the UK who then put me in touch with another, and then GB News came up as a possibility, and I said, sure, great.
Right. So in a way, but GB News in a way attests to something that there is change happening in certain countries. You're beginning to hear certain differing opinions. A debate is opening up. Do you think there's any chance of that happening in Ireland? I hear rumblings and I see rumblings of discontent in Ireland, especially on alternative media, put it that way. Do you think something like that can happen? Maybe Ireland is just waiting for somebody to take the initiative and launch a channel where differing opinions are heard.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you touch on something that is quite prominent in Ireland, is this sort of traditionally the traditional media establishment have a series of accepted views on a whole range of issues. And if you fall outside of that Overton window, if your views, which has been shifting obviously more left and left for years, if you're, and the thing is, they admit this. It's very amusing. Hugh Linehan of the Irish Times. Now, I know we're moving off Israel here briefly, but
no, that's fine. It's fine.
Hugh Linehan of the Irish Times wrote about this last month, even in relation to the transgender debate. And then he essentially said in this article that the Irish media class is a small enough circle, and you have a series of accepted views, and if you fall outside of that, then you're not included. So this is where, for example, gripped media have been have been garnering huge publicity over the last few years, and rightly so. They have high quality reporters who speak about issues and offer differing opinions than you will hear on any other Irish media form. And I mean, I've met and even moderated a debate with John McGurk, and they have he does a great weekly podcast as well that I advise anyone to listen to if they want to feel sane. And frankly, so yeah, no, I think they're definitely differing media forms, and a lot of people who feel general discontentment with the Irish establishment, both the parties in government and the opposition, because the opposition are just more left than the government. No, there hasn't really been a clear kind of political breakthrough yet. If we look at the Oireachtas, I think that's coming. Yeah, as I mentioned, Gript are certainly picking up on a lot of that discontent.
Right.
Let me bring a comment from Mart Goldman. It's about something that happened to me recently. I'm not going to dig into it because I think the whole situation to me is still obscure. So Mart says it's completely unacceptable the way people are treated in Ireland because of their views. The way LOI Talk reacted to your views, Vitor, was unacceptable and highly unprofessional. Mart, thank you for your support. Let me just comment on that briefly, because as I said, I think some elements are not really clear, at least to me. Like the LOI Talk crowd, they never mentioned that they got rid of me because of my views on Israel. Okay. Now I believe that those views they were an issue, not only when they got rid of me, but from the beginning. So I think they compiled a couple of situations, including the discrepancy between my views and theirs when it comes to Israel and Gaza, to pursue a different route. I think there are also some other players that we are not really aware of, and it all worked out as an excuse for them to go one way and I go a different. So I thank you for your support. I'm not really sure what happened. I wish the best for those guys. I think they have a fabulous project. I was happy to be part of the beginning, but of course I would like at this point to be told the real reasons why they didn't count on me going forward. I want to pick on something that you just said, Jamie, the mob mentality. You mentioned this during this conversation. I think you also referred on another interview, and I think it's quite scary, this group thinking, because like I don't care much if people disagree. That's fine. They can have their own views. But when I start to realize that they all think the same crap and there's no real thought, on their views. They are just echoing what they heard on the news, what they saw on TikTok, or what the workmates or friends are saying. Then we have a serious concern, because we all know that can be the beginning of a dictatorship. Because when there is no resistance, then those big institutions can take over, and we know from history that that's not what we want to happen. Now, Ireland, as most of the native English-speaking countries, you never had like a proper dictatorship, as Italy had, Portugal had, Germany had. Do you think the fact that Ireland has lived on democracy for the last 100 years makes somehow the Irish people naive?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you look at a map of Europe from Greece up to Norway, etc., the whole continent, Ireland has had probably the most privileged, I would say, last 100 plus years. I mean, we've been a democracy consistently since 1922. We have never fought a war. State was very poor for a long time, and you had, the Catholic state was an enormous force, kind of outlandishly within the state. But essentially Ireland has been if you look at the world and Europe even, it's been a good place to live that's been fairly devoid of a lot of the suffering that you would see elsewhere. So I think that's certainly part of it. People don't know how grateful they should be for having had the freedoms that Ireland has provided them. Like you say, people are, but worse than that is, the sort of conformity and groupthink that is becoming more and more pervasive, which is pretty grotesque. People simply holding the views that they see around them more and more, and not wishing to know more or be curious. There's a complete lack of curiosity in understanding more about the world. So and then being able to have a free exchange of opinions. I think cancel culture has obviously been very bad for that. So as I say, there does seem to be a bit more conformity and groupthink as the years have gone by. And then personally speaking, I just get very concerned with that. And I mean, I know I can still acknowledge that Ireland and other countries in Western Europe, they're still the freest parts to be in the world, but all the more reason to preserve those ideals and want high standards in the area of public discourse. And I mean, I grew up on, really with these ideas being, taught to me. I mean, my father brought me to Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park a couple of times as a child, to witness people getting up on a soapbox to speak about whatever topic they wish. And then the people could come along, listen, and have a free exchange of ideas. And even Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park isn't as idyllic as that anymore these days. There's been plenty of incidents of violence there over the last couple of years.
That's very true. That's very true. It's the usual suspects that try to shut down debate. They find it difficult to handle anything that opposes their view and to see it in a critical light. And I see it by the comments here in the chat box. It's very interesting. People that live in an echo chamber that have obviously no knowledge of history, no knowledge of the Middle East, and yet they are prepared to commit themselves. They speak about international law, and they speak about pronouncements of the International Court of Human Rights and of Justice, and it is quite extraordinary that they haven't really delved into it, and they're just living in this echo chamber. It's sad. It is sad that the level has gone down to such an extent. Can you tell us something about your experience yesterday in the Oireachtas? I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about that.
So the Irish Parliament being led, well, particularly in regards to this piece of legislation, it is certainly a crusade of Simon Harris, the Taoiseach, Minister for Foreign Affairs, So the bill is called the Prohibition on the Importation of Goods, and it specifically tries to go after any goods produced in East Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, as it's also called. And yeah, so essentially that's being brought forward at the moment. It first came about way back in 2018, called the Occupied Territories Bill. It's brought about by Senator Francis Black. Ignored for, well, sorry, it was embraced, but then it was shelved and never brought into
enacted.
It never enacted because it goes against EU trade laws. Trade is, if you're a member of the European Union, individual nation states can't pass their own pieces of legislation when it comes to trade. But Simon Harris is now plowing ahead anyway with it. And yesterday there was it's been in the Foreign Affairs Committee now for a few weeks. Of course, the other side to us, the pro-Palestinian view, have had two opportunities to go into this Foreign Affairs Committee and do kind of hearings where they give a statement, and then lawmakers who are on the committee, cross parties, TDs and senators, will put questions to them. And we were thankfully invited in yesterday as part of the Ireland-Israel Alliance, and then also the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland, to give a bit of pushback on this bill. And there was Alan Shatter, Morris Cohen, Chief Rabbi, and Natasha Hausdorff as well, who was appearing online. So really some excellent voices there. And it was that's a bit of a background, and as I'll come to more in a minute.
Very interesting indeed. But it seems to have fallen on deaf ears, because these people are incapable of engaging with facts. And I think a lady who's making comments here, who says she's white, ethnic, British, as if it had anything to do with it. I'd like to address this, because it's very interesting. This is indicative of what I term Palisteria, people incapable of handling facts. Now, what she says here is she's white, ethnic, British. I have been protesting against the Zionist-led Israel. I mean, it's basically a stream of consciousness. There's no cogent argument here. It's continued persecution of the Palestinians for 77 plus years, since she was 11 years old. So it's a little mixed up with a little bit of emotive language as well. Now, let's remind this lady, Michelle Norris, that there were no Palestinian people when the United Nations partition plan was drafted. So there was nobody was even speaking of a Palestinian people all those years ago, for one very simple reason: because they didn't exist. And people should bear in mind that there was a partition plan whereby, and it concerned another Arab state, as if there was a lack of Arab states. And people should bear in mind that not only were the Arabs given 44% of pre-1967 Israel as well, and there was no occupation of Judea and Samaria. There was an illegal occupation by the Jordanians. So people should try to address these facts. Michelle Norris, try reading a little bit. Try coming out of that echo chamber. Use the neurons you have left.
But that's what you said there, like, as an example. Those are serious points that were attempted to be made yesterday by members of our side. Let's speak about, okay, the history of Jerusalem. Why do you want to ban goods from East Jerusalem? Can we even talk about in relation to the West Bank? What's the difference between area A, B, and C? These are sort of technical, legal, and historical details that the committee had really no interest in getting into.
It is an act of self-lobotomization, as this lady has clearly illustrated. She's incapable of connecting the dots and dealing with facts. Facts simply don't get in her way.
And I mean, okay, regardless of even the legality and morality of trying to put forward this bill. I mean, the first bill since 1945 where a European country will try and limit commerce with Jewish businesses. From a selfish point of view, from the Irish state, shall we say, and its tax-paying citizens, number one, this would immediately bring us into conflict with the United States, because in 38, I believe, of the 50 United States, there is existing anti-BDS legislation, which means that companies who would do business with countries where there is
penalized,
legislation would be penalized. So that immediately brings us into conflict with America. Also, we're going after a massive ally of America, and that's why you have, for example, Ambassador Mike Huckabee today saying that it was an act of diplomatic intoxication, and a couple of other colorful comments. But I agree with the sentiment, certainly. And and so you also, you first have the American issue, and we've had enormous luck. Well, I wouldn't call it luck, because there were key steps put in place by Irish politicians in the past to ensure that we had great commercial ties built with American companies who employ thousands and thousands of people within Ireland and contribute to our enormous corporation tax take that we see today. So we're actually trying to almost throw that away. We're actually, instead of trying to maintain and progress this fantastic thing that we've got going as a country, we want to limit that for some reason.
Certainly.
And then secondly, so you have the American, massive business ties, and then secondly, you have the fact that we exist as a member of the European Union. As I've already mentioned, trade falls to the bureaucrats in Brussels, whether we like it or not. And here we are going off on our own and acting as a bit of a rogue state within the European Union, trying to do our own foreign policy, and that isolates us from Brussels, and certainly brings our credibility down a bit. And then when you talk about it, even from a contemporary point of view, you have the European Union and the United States really on the brink of, if not already in, a trade war over tariffs and such. And here's us going off on our own, waging a war against the United States. Not quite waging a war, but
certainly rubbing them up the wrong way. Put it that way.
Yeah, we'll know what I mean. And this was, some of those points were put to the committee yesterday, and they essentially tried to dismiss it. Firstly, they called any kind of discussion of history whataboutery, and as tried to say multiple times, for God's sake, this is not whataboutery. This is extremely relevant information to the bill. You don't know what you're doing. And then when you mentioned the harm that it will bring to Ireland specifically, they're actually okay with sweeping that under the rug, because Ireland is, as they see it, in the moral right. That a good thing for Ireland to do, even if it means, as I said on GB News, sacrificing ourselves on the altar of Palestinianism. We're going to plow ahead with it anyway and create problems for ourselves, because key people in high positions have decided that the Palestinian Authority and much more ominous factions are a cause that we should sacrifice ourselves for.
Just going back to the comments, to the echo chamber, my understanding, the issue is not only their history knowledge. There are two other subjects that for sure they don't really master. One is geography, because I doubt that these people, if I give them a globe or a physical map, if they know what a physical map is, they don't know how to locate Israel, let alone Gaza and the West Bank. And the other one is mathematics, because they are not aware that the Gaza population, despite the so-called genocide, has largely increased since. That brings the history topic, since Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005. Is it something that it's also unknown to the students these days, Jamie?
No, but they're not interested in hearing points that might change their worldview a bit. I mean, and not just students, people like David McCullough on RTE News. Only last night with Ilan Pappé, bizarrely, and I really don't even hear people often trying to deny this because it's such a non-disputed fact. He actually on air tried to say that there was extremely little evidence that Hamas used civilian infrastructure for military purposes. And that they have tunnels, over 500 kilometers of tunnels throughout the Gaza Strip, where they have brought many of the hostages over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So they don't want things that will challenge their own worldview, and that's something I try to do. As I say, I wouldn't have read an Ilan Pappé and Noam Chomsky book if I didn't want to try and come up against the other side.
Indeed. Absolutely.
Let me bring another comment from Mart Goldman. What are your thoughts on how the recent Superman film, which I didn't watch, so I leave this question for you guys, depicted the war being clearly anti-Semitic? I think that's what he meant.
I have no idea, to be honest. I haven't watched the recent.
Did any of you watch Mark?
No, absolutely no. I'm not.
We need to watch it.
Let's stick to things we know about. Yeah.
We'll watch it, and then maybe we can do a session on this. Well, okay, I'll go back to the youth. Okay, so I remember when I was in my 20s, we're all. I'm 42 now, so we were all against the establishment. That was the thing, just because. So if the establishment would say white, we would say black. If the establishment would say water, we would say whiskey. But it's not like that anymore. Like, it seems that the youth is very happy to be part of the establishment. Like, they would be in favor of what they are told. They wouldn't really oppose the mainstream views. We saw that, for instance, with COVID. I expected that the youth would be the first to not wear a mask and that kind of stuff. I'm not encouraging people to go against some health guidelines or anything like that, but you kind of think that the youth is the first to put to present themselves as rebels because it's in their blood. I don't know, Jamie, what you make of that.
I disagree a little bit. I think people still think of themselves as going against the establishment. I mean, plenty of people think Simon Harris and the current government are, as in their words, enabling a genocide, or they think that oh my God, these guys are they're still friends with the Israelis, with us. Look, I to some degree, I mean, you were right. I think when you mentioned COVID, definitely, but generally, these people, they still think they're being anti-establishment. It's just they have, I think, the wrong view of.
Yeah.
That's actually, you make a good point. That's how much of an echo chamber Ireland is, particularly on this. People don't understand that they already live in Ireland, the country which has by far and away the most anti-Israel sentiment in Europe, but they don't really think about that or see that, I think, because if they did, they'd obviously recognize, they're already living in a country which is doing everything possible to try and smear Israel.
Yes.
I think, honestly, some of them still do think of themselves, regard themselves as being anti-establishment, but it doesn't, maybe all they're doing is just being more left-wing, really.
Very interesting. I'm noticing we have some comments here, and this is wonderful stuff because we can address some of the topics here. A gentleman here, Alan Shatter, is a raging Zionist, so it's clearly somebody in an altered mental state. Stop the Palestinian Holocaust, never again for anyone. Remember, now I think what we should do, we have an opportunity to remind people of Haj Amin al-Husseini, who is the spiritual father of Palestinism. So perhaps we should encourage this gentleman to go and study a little bit of history.
November 1941, he met Adolf Hitler. Yeah.
Exactly, and he organized Muslim SS divisions in the ex-Yugoslavia, and he was actually planning to build a concentration camp in the Dotan Valley here in Israel. So perhaps, Francis, you can check these things, and perhaps you might learn something. Now, go ahead.
Say just a small thing to add, like, luckily Rommel wasn't able to push that far eastwards, but the idea was that as soon as Rommel reached the Holy Land, you'd have Jews living there as well.
Absolutely. So the one has to understand what Palestinism is. Now, the PLO, and we're repeating things, but we have to bang on about it a bit because people don't hear these things. So we acknowledge that the spiritual father of Palestinism was Hajj Amin al-Husseini, a Nazi collaborator, and this is well attested to. Unfortunately, the British refused to extradite him, so there was a bit of collusion there. He managed to get away. Now, the PLO was actually formed in 1964, before Israel reacquired Judea and Samaria after 2,000 years. So people should bear that in mind. And they should also bear in mind that in 1948, the surrounding Arab states waged a genocidal war against the Jews. So I'd like to encourage the people who are having a look to read a little bit more, study a little bit more, start asking a few more questions.
If there's any book I could recommend to anyone, that essentially it almost encompasses all of the lies that have been put together by Israel for so many decades. It's Industry of Lies by Ben Dror-Meany, an Israeli journalist. It's got footnotes throughout that you can investigate. I'd advise anyone who who hears these sort of sample, tokenistic slogans that are thrown out about Israel.
Yes.
Trying to demonize the country. I'd advise them to read that book, or even something of a pocketbook, which goes some way as well, is Alan Dershowitz's recent book as well.
Certainly, he's a very fine jurist. If people want to get a historical understanding, overview, there are a couple of excellent books. One is called From Time Immemorial by Joan Peters, where she very ably dismantles the Palestinist narrative, because many people assume that there was a long-standing ancient population here in the land of Israel. In fact, most of people who have had this Palestinist identity imposed upon them, because they're also unfortunate. I have many Arab friends here in Israel who don't consider them, so they don't want to know anything about Palestinism. They have never considered themselves Palestinists, okay, let alone Palestinian. There are entire ethnic groups here. People come to the land, and I would recommend that people come here and tour the country.
Visiting is the greatest education.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If people are not into books, they can pack and visit Israel. As a matter of fact, I was checking the flight tickets for Q4, and you can get the tickets from Dublin for 250, 300 dirham max, which is a bargain these days. So let's encourage people to visit Israel, see it with their own eyes. I was there in June, and to Marco's point, like, I saw Arabs selling Israeli flags. I saw Arabs selling Israel map as Israel presents, to the road, with not with this, not the way it is usually seen as a fragmented piece of territory. So if they are doing it, it's for a reason, and you should go there and talk directly to these people, with no intermediaries, with no journalists in between. Just talk to them in person, they will let you know your thoughts.
Indeed.
That's the best way to understand.
Absolutely. Here's Michelle Norris again. This is very interesting. Look at this. Look, the collusion with nothing comes closer than the Havara Agreement. The Havara Agreement was simply to save Jews. They were basically being extorted so that they could escape from Nazi Germany. Yes, that's right. There was a Havara Agreement. There was no collusion about murdering, about a genocide against another population, Miss Norris. Get your facts right. The Zionists did everything they could to get the Jews, to save the Jews, while the British put the barriers up, put up the force field. They protected Haj Amin al-Husseini. They failed to extradite him after the war. I suggest you get your facts right. While the Jews were being blocked from escaping the Holocaust, the British authorities were allowing hundreds of thousands of Arabs to flood the land of Israel. And this is your ancient Palestinian population. Thank you for raising that point.
Let me get into the free speech topic, Jamie, Marco. So I'm curious, after what happened in Limerick, Jamie, if you received in private any words of support, because I believe that most people would hesitate to do it publicly, because they can lose their jobs, they can lose their friends circle. So there are like social repercussions about expressing certain views, and for sure Israel is one of the most dangerous these days. So did you receive any sort of private encouragement from friends or relatives?
An unbelievable amount. This was the extraordinary thing. I mean, I deleted Instagram because the amount of message requests and follow requests I was getting. My LinkedIn was flooded as well. Like, just my WhatsApp. People who know me personally, obviously. People were just so pleasant, offering words of support and appreciation. And I mean, I didn't, like, for example, I was cancelled, you might say, at my university back in March when I founded that pro-Israel society, SSI, and I was removed from my role as chair of the debate society. And there were a couple of articles written about that at the time, but this was a much more public, viral affair. So to have people, members of the Jewish community across Ireland, and also a good few people in the UK as well, reaching out to thank me for the position I was taking, and then also further afield as well, people in Australia or America, just reaching out, and that's very, very heartwarming, I have to say. And especially because I suppose I'd been, actually, it's just by sheer fate, the week leading up to the Pappé event, I'd actually been in Poland for 6 days on a Holocaust study trip with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And you're day in, day out, you're going to synagogues, concentration camps, Einsatzgruppen shooting sites, museums, etc., and you're just trying to understand, more and more how does society come to this stage? How do things degrade so massively that such atrocities can be committed by your average citizen? So on the back of that, and what was a very emotional week, to then have so many hundreds of people reaching out to me, just thanking me, meant an awful lot. And I was thankful as well, because I've been trying to speak up for Israel and the Jewish people for quite a while. So to be able to get such a positive feedback on it was lovely.
Indeed.
So what would be a word of encouragement for someone who is thinking to pursue your route? So they want to do it publicly, but they are hesitating because they are all aware of the price and they don't want to pay that price. And so how would you tell them, go ahead, because it makes sense down the road?
Well, firstly, I think, as regards to a couple of weeks ago, and what I something that was lovely about all the messages was, hopefully, and I was at an event last Tuesday as well, which was, there was about 100 plus people there for a separate matter in Dublin, and all these people are coming up to me so joyous that they saw an Israeli flag out in public like that. So I was thinking, fantastic, if even one person is encouraged by what I did, to, get into a conversation about it and speak their views at their local supermarket or GAA club or wherever it may be, fantastic. That's a great thing. And so, I mean, look, I wouldn't advise or, ask, of course, that people engage so heavily as like what I've been trying to do over the past few months, with, writing articles or whatever. And I certainly wouldn't advise too many people to go to an IPSC event with an Israel flag just to get into a row, because oftentimes it's not worth it. For me, I wanted to go there on that day because Pappé was a big name, and I had to challenge him. But honestly, for people, to encourage people to speak up for themselves a bit more, just appreciate, I guess, what the alternative is. What is the alternative is more and more people not engaging with an exchange of views, and bad actors believing that they have more and more of a monopoly on the discourse, so thus they can become more radical. So think about what the alternative is, and that should give a bit of motivation to say what they believe. And secondly, I guess, just embrace your uniqueness. Each person is his own individual. Humans weren't made, I believe, to live, simply like sheep. So
Yeah.
I think I try and put across.
Yeah.
Speaking,
that reminds me of. So can I just say one thing here, Marco?
Yeah, go ahead.
That reminds me of Jordan Peterson's advice when it comes to speaking up your mind. I'm going to try. I will try to quote him as much as my memory allows, but he says something that, like, when you have something to say and you stay silent, you are lying. So basically, his view is that if you have something to share and you don't, you are cheating yourself. And we all know that lying is not the best way to present yourself in public, because at some point you don't know what you stand for, and you're going to lose yourself. And there's nothing more concerned when it comes to personal development than not knowing who you are. Because from where do you start if you don't know who you are? You'll be lost. So I think that really resonates with that encouragement of be honest with yourself, embrace uniqueness, as you just said, and then the rest will come. The rest will come. It won't be easy. It will, there will be up and downs, but down the road it will make sense. Just it's not that evident at the beginning.
You brought something to mind, actually. Just obviously Jordan Peterson speaks and writes a lot about authoritarian regimes, and I myself was felt encouraged to read more as I encountered this. And one of the very key things that I remember thinking that was very poignant was the fact that Solzhenitsyn, when writing about the Soviet Union and authoritarian regimes in general, was that it's not the big figurehead at the top that keeps the society ticking along and everyone in this sort of tyranny. It's not actually the big figurehead at the top. It's every single member of society that goes along with the daily lie. And so, of course, that's a situation that people should want to avoid, and it's why individuals should remember that they have agency.
Very well spoken, and which reminds us of the great Irish philosopher Edmund Burke, and he said, all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. And indeed, Palestinism besmirches the good name of Ireland, because Irish people are well-meaning people, generous people, and they've had this blanket Palestinism practiced upon them for decades, and it's very sad. And unfortunately, what people don't realize, that Palestinism is a retrovirus which is weakening the immune system of Ireland. It is a way for jihadi Islam to expand, even when it's sugar-coated. And I don't think there's a full realization of this. All the rogues coalesce around the Palestinist flag at every demonstration. I'm sure you've noticed.
anyone to like listen to or read a bit of Douglas Murray on this. I mean, the Palestinian movement, as you say, is more and more, it's simply a movement of anti-Western ideals. It's people who have absolute contempt and disregard for the greatness that the Western civilization has brought to our part of the world. And they have absolute contempt for those ideals, and they can all unite together under the Palestinian flag, unfortunately.
Indeed. And I would like to actually, I'm very grateful to Michelle Norris, who is a Palestinist. And I'd like to address what she says here, because there's no relationship with reality or with history. According to immigration records, the Zionists showed preference for American and UK Jewish people, which is an absolute, to use a technical term, it is a load of unadulterated codswallop. Okay, to go back to the 1930s, the British closed the door. There was no choice anymore. The Jews had nowhere to go, Michelle Norris. The Jews had nowhere to go. The homeland was blocked, while at the same time, the British were allowing hundreds of thousands of Arabs to come to the land. And do you know why they came to the land, Michelle Norris? Because the Jews created opportunity. The nasty Jews, Zionists, reclaimed the land. They built factories. They innovated in agriculture. Study, listen, learn.
Well, actually, a very important thing to note as well is, people, like that sort of
comment. We have to be grateful to these people. They're doing us a big favor.
People who make those sorts of comments, and, we see it all the time, particularly in American campuses where race is a bigger issue than in Ireland. But they love to paint Israel as this white supremacist, colonialist entity. And I mean, for God's sake, in the 5 years after 1948, when Israel was founded, and you had 900,000 Jewish residents of Arab countries, massive populations in places like Morocco, Iraq, Aleppo, who were Tunisia, who were all then booted out.
Absolutely.
And all Mizrahi Jews, to give them their proper title, and who all made their way to Israel and were absorbed and are citizens of the state today, and comprise a majority of the country. I mean, Israel is a minority, Ashkenazi nation, you might say.
Yes, at the moment it's tilted slightly. Yes, that's a very acute observation. That is correct. Yes.
Over the decades, yeah. And I mean, you look at the way even slightly different, but you look at the way Ethiopian Jews were airlifted out of Ethiopia through Operation Moses and Operation Solomon in 84, 91, and make up a small percentage of the population, but they're certainly noticeable and can embrace all the freedoms that Israel has. So, but
absolutely,
Douglas Murray puts it, I think, because he's written about the sort of this class of people who really are anti-Western for a couple of years. And this is where I think actually what makes young people so emboldened on this. And essentially, young people have grown up on this sort of culture of self-loathing about any European and American history and the ideals that come with that for years. That's what they've grown up on. And suddenly here's Israel, a Western country. But there isn't really anything they can do about it, this sort of culture of self-loathing. So, for example, even in Bristol a couple of years ago, I'll never forget it, people hauling down the statue of Edward Colston. They'll haul a statue down, but naturally they're not going to tear down the school and the hospital that he also paid for.
Indeed.
And for example, this was a very common thing, tearing down statues, etc. But it isn't, thankfully, within these people's power to decolonize their, all the institutions that make up the society and the country itself and the very identity. But suddenly here are a group of terrorist groups led by Iran that are waging war on Israel, a Western nation. So suddenly it's the perfect opportunity for them to prove their virtue and feel good about themselves by encouraging the destruction of this Western country.
That's very true.
That's what's motivated so many of them to
And people like Michelle Norris are very disappointed that it's not happening and that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I hate to disappoint her, but I am grateful for her comments, but she has provided the stimuli to raise certain topics. Thank you, Michelle. We are indebted to you.
As we come to an end, Jamie, would you let us know where people can find students supporting Israel, what you guys do, and if someone is keen to contribute or collaborate or even join, what should they do?
So, I mean, if they want to send me a message, my LinkedIn is the best place. It's just Jamie O'Mahony, like it appears here. And if they want to go to Instagram, really, which is probably the best showcase of what students supporting Israel is, we're the branch that I established is just SSI_DCU, and then the big page for all the branches of SSI globally is it's the full title. It's just Students Supporting Israel, be the name of that account. And then also if they want to make a more sort of immediate on the ground difference, link up with local Irish people who feel the same, I would say join the Ireland Israel Alliance mailing list, become a paid up member, and really you will come into contact with other Irish people of all ages from differing backgrounds who have similar opinions on this matter.
Excellent. That's a very commendable endeavor, Jamie. May I just end by addressing our newly acquired friend Michelle Norris, who speaks about Avi Shlaim, more appropriately named Avi Shlemiel, who speaks about Jewish attacks in other Middle East countries, self-sabotaging the Jewish people there to encourage more immigration to Palestine. They didn't need much immigration. As soon as they had the chance, they came, basically, Michelle. Bear in mind that you speak about Avi Shlaim, and you're referring to Iraqi Jewry. Let me remind you of the Farhud. The Farhud, the pogrom in Iraq, inspired by Haj Amin al-Husseini, your Palestinist friend. Thank you so much, Michelle. We are indebted to you. And on that, go ahead, Majid.
Important to note as well, just on the topic of the Jews in Arab countries, it wasn't exactly an ideal existence there. You're living as a non-Muslim in a Muslim state. You have dhimmi status.
Absolutely.
Attacks, often forbidden from owning land, certain professions, etc., etc. So, I mean, look, like whether it be in Arab countries or in Europe or elsewhere, this is why it's a fantastic reason that Israel is a Jewish home.
Yes, you've raised a very interesting point, because people are under the impression that Jews lived very well in Muslim lands. It's quite the opposite for most of history. Not to say that it was continuously bad, but people very often speak about the Crusades as if similar things never happened in Muslim lands. That's quite untrue. The Muslim massacres of Jews anteceded the Crusades by centuries.
Very interestingly, actually, sorry, it just came to mind.
Go ahead.
That Yasser Arafat, I think it was in 1996, when he was responding to Arabs who were dissatisfied with the Oslo Accords because they saw it as
very good point you're raising.
Normalization of Israel. This is the end of our. You're bringing to an end our idea of wiping Israel out as a state. And he actually quoted to them a treaty of, I think it was
Hudaybiyah.
Yes. 628.
Exactly.
Made with
that's right. He quoted that in the mosque in South Africa, because he spoke to an English-speaking audience in one way and to a Muslim Arab audience in another way. He used that to say, this is just implementing the plan of phases, which you're familiar with, Jamie. The plan of phases of the PLO, where they just take what they could in negotiations, establish bases within land that was ceded, and then come in for the kill. Plan of phases, and that's the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Yes, thank you for raising that again. Yes. Great. Vitor.
On a professional and personal level, I just want to ask, what are your prospects
Oh,
You are
this
still
is, hang on.
studying?
Sorry, because this is. I'm really enjoying this. I have to
Okay.
say, the Chilcot report states that the Iraq War was illegal. Please read it. We're going off to the Iraq War. It's a slight non sequitur here, Michelle. We're talking about something else now. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Vitor.
And I just want to ask Jamie prospects on a professional, personal level. So I presume you are nearly finishing your degree. And I also heard that your girlfriend broke up with you because of your geopolitical venture. So
So I've 2 years of university left. I study business. So yeah, look, I'm unsure. I like I mean, I like interacting with the media, but I know to be a journalist is a difficult career. I would, potentially like to work in a Department of Foreign Affairs context, or who knows? I study business also, so I might just pursue a regular job in the private sector. So yeah, look, I'm not sure yet. I've got time. I'm 21. I've got 2 years of university left, and for now, I'm just following my passions and my interests, and seeing where that takes me. And it's been a fun ride.
Excellent.
no comments on the women's side of the house.
That's.
No, we don't need to.
No need to comment. We don't
We'll
need
do
to go
another
into that.
session.
Not
We'll do another
live. Not live.
session.
We'll do a matchmaking session for another time. But not
Marco is
live.
very good with that, by the way. Yes,
matchmaker.
some skill. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
yeah, I want to thank you for your insights, Jamie. I think they were very, 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 very valuable for people who lived in an echo chamber, especially those who flooded our comments box today. So I want to thank them as well, because we need
We
a
are
dialogue
indebted
here.
to
We are
them.
not here just agreeing with each other. We want to hear the others. We are not just talking to the wall.
Indeed.
We want to hear the other side. We want to have dialogue. We want this to be an open and honest conversation. That's what we are here for every Wednesday. So, Jamie, you are always welcome to come back. We have, topics which I think will resonate with your interests. So you are always welcome to join us. And I also want to encourage others who enjoyed what they watched today to press those 3 buttons below. Subscribe if they haven't, to press the like button, because that will help a lot to this thing to be distributed, because we all know that it's not always about the quality or the what you delivered, but there are other factors. But we can get into that in another podcast. And if you know someone who is into this sort of conversations and they are not aware of what we do, it would be great if you can just press the share button. So with that, I wish everyone a good evening, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
Lovely. Thanks, guys.